everyone, I'm Chelsea Harris. I'm the founder of this beautiful company, Inspired Mama. But that aside, I'm also mum to 4 very energetic boys. Now, as a qualified health and mindset coach, personal trainer, nutrition expert, I understand the challenges that come with trying to improve our health and our well-being, but also juggle multiple responsibilities in a career. Now, my journey in this sector actually began 2 decades ago, where I was working with women who were struggling with health. They felt like they were cycling through various diets and exercise programs and just never having lasting success. And this was something that I actually struggled with myself. So through my own personal experience and what I gained from the education system and working within health sciences and psychology, this actually led me to create the company Inspired Mama. Now, over the last 7 years, I've dedicated myself to helping women break free from this cycle of short-term fixes and helping them develop long-lasting, sustainable health habits. So for the past decade, I've been coaching, training, and consulting women worldwide, offering really comprehensive health solutions and personal development programs. Now, the Inspired Mum approach addresses the core challenges that modern women face, and it's overcoming a fear of failure, managing their stress, and building lasting healthy habits amongst their busy lives. So today I'm really excited to talk about this crucial topic for all of us if we want to strive and make lasting changes in our health and lifestyle. And that is the ability to obliterate this fear and overcome this worry that we're going to fail again. So in this training, we're going to explore the psychological barriers that often hold us back and how to break through them. We'll discuss key components that contribute to our success, and we're going to understand how our subconscious beliefs are created, how to manage our stress response, and how to create a supportive environment and build positive habits that we can stick with. I'm going to share some really practical strategies with you that are going to help you optimize each of these areas, helping you boost your confidence and achieve those lasting results that you deserve. We'll also identify those sneaky everyday behaviors that can sabotage our progress when we don't even realize it. And by the end of this training, you're going to have actionable steps that can help you create a more resilient, successful approach to your health journey. So you ready to obliterate fear and overcome this failure? Let's dive in. Welcome. So what I want to talk about today is the sense of fear that we feel when we're trying to make changes to our life, and particularly when we're trying to make changes to our health. It has quite a strong dieting history. The problem is that when you come into trying to change your health again, you have all these preconceived ideas about what you think you're capable of or not capable of. And so instantly there's like this hesitation as to how long we're going to sustain the commitment, and this fear that, well, there's a few fears, particularly when people come into acceleration, because it's like, 1, I'm paying all this money and I really want to get these results. And then 2, it's like, what happens if I go through all this and then I don't make it? And this is meant to be like the one thing that's going to help me solve it. Does that mean I'm totally useless? And then the third thing is, am I ever going to be able to stick this out and maintain, this expectation? And I think because in acceleration, there are those 8 habits that we're tracking on a daily basis. People can get overwhelmed with how much they think that they need to be doing in order to be able to get results, rather than focusing on the small things that need to be put in on a daily basis. And so I just want to talk about that fear that exists, and it comes up for us all. And the longer that you're on that journey, the more that fear dissipates. And people often talk to me about, well, that's a subconscious belief that I have about myself, that I have poor willpower, or that I never stick at exercise, or that I'm only good at managing my food, or I'm only good at managing my exercise. I don't seem to be able to pull it together. Or that whenever mum life gets really busy, I get derailed and then I can't seem to get myself back on track. Or if I have a binge eating episode, it takes me weeks to get back into momentum. And these are subconscious belief systems that we have. But what we have to realize is that at some point in our lives, our subconscious belief, we're not born with our subconscious belief systems. They develop over a period of time. And when there is a point in our lives at which we hone in on a belief system that we have for ourselves, and because our brain can only process so much information at any given time, what happens is it goes, okay, this is what I believe about myself. This is what I think is my reality. And then it just picks up data that supports that belief system. Whether we want to own that belief system or not is totally out of our control. Our subconscious just naturally only notices the data that supports that belief system. So it just reaffirms our identity, who we think we are, and our subconscious. So then what we have to do is we have to be very aware of, what am I paying attention to in my behaviors and in my thinking patterns, so that I can start to adjust those subconscious belief systems and understand that I do get the choice to change my health. I can sustain anything that I want, but if I, As in, I can sustain any habits or changes that I want, as long as I don't overexert myself and put myself into that self-preservation mode, which I was talking about when we drop below the 50% energy line, when our biochemical state isn't happy, which I'm going to talk about more in this. But with your subconscious belief systems, the thing is, people want to often change the way that they think about themselves and how they feel about themselves in a given area of their life. And the only way to do that is by putting in action. So people say, well, how do I change my subconscious belief? It's like, well, you have to put in the reps. You have to take action, and then your thoughts will adjust, and then push yourself a little bit further, take more action. And when you keep taking action in the right direction, you're ultimately voting for that best self. What happens is that your mind starts to go, oh, I am capable of this. I can do this. And it starts to have an inner faith. Your self-belief increases. And then as a result, we continue to move forward. So just know that when you're stuck in a space, being in that state of motion or thinking is not going to help you overcome the fear. It's only the action that you take which will start to reprogram your mind to say, yes, I can do this actually, because you're developing skills in that area. So what real danger versus perceived fear? Now, we can feel a sense of fear when we're trying to push ourselves outside of our comfort zone. And it feels almost like we're in danger. And that's why people, that reactive pattern that people can get when they feel like they're being pushed too far can just kind of switch on and overrule us. And it's not necessarily that we're actually in danger. There's not actually, like, very rarely are we in danger, nowadays, considering, we're fortunate enough to live in Australia, and also dependent on your job and all those sorts of things. I mean, Renee, you probably have much more dangerous than the majority of us. But, we have actual real danger, and then we have like this perceived fear. And really, that when we're trying to push ourselves outside of our comfort zone, it's just this uncomfortableness that we feel. And it can make us feel quite stressed and want to reject the changes that we're trying to make, because our brain doesn't necessarily always want to take on more. It wants to stay in the comfort zone. And so we have to understand that when we're trying to make changes to our lifestyle, it is going to make us uncomfortable until we've done enough reps and we start to have a self-belief that we can manage that and sustain it and change it. Now, there's a genuine difference between perceived fear and real danger, but unfortunately, our behavior is shaped by perceived fear more than we care to admit or realize. So real danger rarely occurs, and yet perceived threats can flick the switch and turn on the fight or flight part of our brain, much like we were being targeted or we're concerned for our own safety. This is otherwise known as the sympathetic nervous system, which takes over the logical and rational part of our mind. Now, the logical and rational mind slows our heart rate, lowers our blood pressure after our fight or flight response has been engaged. Now, the calm, logical, rational part of the nervous system, which is the parasympathetic nervous system, is the best state of mind to be in when we're working towards our goals. Because if we're stressed, then the brain switches off, we can't problem solve, we get overwhelmed, we struggle to find solutions. So we've got to learn how to maintain a baseline level of stress where we can make conscious choices. Now, the problem is that when most women start wanting to lose weight and change their health, they're already in quite a stressed state. So predominantly when people are contacting me wanting to work with me for acceleration or know more about it, they're mainly in a space where they feel like they need to do something drastic. They're quite overwhelmed with what to do. They don't know what the next steps are, and they probably have a large background of dieting and a whole heap of information, and it's kind of like too much overload for them. They're really fearful of committing again and not sticking at it. And they're worried that they won't be able to sustain those changes when they're in it. Because if they've tried before and it hasn't worked for them, they think, well, what's going to be different this time? And do I know that I'm going to be able to stick this out, or am I going to be giving up on myself? Now, the problem is that remaining in this stress state actually hinders our ability to get results, okay? And it keeps feeding into that internal belief system that we have of, I can't change this, or I'm stuck, or this doesn't work for me, or I'm no good at it. Now, when we're in a calm state and we're managing our stress, we can make rational decisions and assess future consequences, rather than being in a state of fear that may cause you to make rash decisions that we later regret. Now, I want you to consider, when you're in a state of fear of failure, how does that play out in your actions? Now, if I talk about myself, when I'm in a state of fear of failure, I avoid. I'm like, I can't do that. It's not going to work for me. I don't want to do it. I kind of justify why I need to avoid it. And then I guess kind of get defensive about it. And I just want to leave it and, move away from it when something's too great a challenge. Now, I don't feel like this anymore with my health, but I feel like this in other areas of my life. Like there's certain times in the business when it's very challenging. I'm just like ready to throw my hands up and walk away. And so you've got to realize within yourself, what is that state that you move into when you're scared of not meeting your own expectations, and how does that play out in your behavior? Because if you can see that, you can say, this is just a fear, like I'm just pushing myself here, and I'm understanding that I'm expecting more of myself and I'm trying to up the ante, and that makes me feel worried that I'm not going to meet those expectations. And you're all here because we all want to improve and grow as individuals. That's why we're doing this. Now, the more time that we can spend in a calm and rational state, the easier our life will become, and the faster that we can find focus, and the less we procrastinate, the more action that we take that is in alignment with our goals. Also, when we're in this really calm state, we can talk through our problems without getting overly emotional about them. I know for myself, if I'm worried about something not meeting my own expectations, I can get quite emotional about it. Now, anxiety and stress override even those individuals whose psychology, my Zoom video's in the way, I can't see. There we go. Anxiety and stress can override even the healthiest individual's psychology and send them into a state of panic. Okay, so anxiety and stress is just one of those things. Once that cortisol is pumped into our body, that fight or flight response is triggered, our patterns of behavior play out. And so that's what we've got to work out. Okay, what are the patterns of behavior that play out for me? How do I respond in those moments? How can I start to minimize how frequently they get triggered, and then try and make calm decisions in the lead up to that, manage that as much as possible, and then try and retrain ourselves how we respond in that moment. Now, when this occurs and we do get triggered, we can go from conscious creation to unconscious behavior within seconds. It just plays out. It's interesting to watch it, because I see myself react just like my dad. And I'm like, why out of both parents did I choose my dad to respond like him? But I suppose that was the most reaction I constantly had in my face. Now, this can either save our life or it can sabotage our success, okay? So what is your unconscious behavior that plays out when you're in a stressed, overwhelmed, or anxious state? It really helps if you write this down, guys, because it'll make you very consciously aware of it, and then you'll start to notice it when you start to get triggered and it starts to amp up. Now, things that can trigger us aren't necessarily just about our health. There's a whole heap of things which can trigger people. And if the threat is merely perceived and repeatedly triggered by a particular stimulus, you can see this particular thing you can sort of create a relationship with these things that instantly start to make you feel a bit tense. So people can get very triggered by financial issues, of course, managing the home when you feel like you're doing everything and you're not getting a whole lot of help. Your children, just the demands of parenting kids, cleaning up after them, getting up out of bed at night for them, all those things. Your relationships with your family, your friends, your partner, career pressures that can be put on you, trying to manage your health problems. And then a massive trigger is obviously when we feel out of control, or that something is not something that we can do something about in that moment. Now, being triggered by these things continually can play havoc on your emotional state, and particularly on your adrenal glands. So every time the fight or flight response is engaged, we receive a rush of adrenaline, and that can make us feel sick. It can affect our digestive system as it can shut down, and our focus narrows on the threat at hand. Now, the problem is that if you're being triggered by several different things on this list, which, let's be honest, it's probably not that hard to be triggered by managing the home, children, and a relationship in your life reasonably often, then what can happen is it can get stuck in this on position. Now, that when it gets stuck in the on position, it can result in chronic stress, severe exhaustion, and even adrenal fatigue. Now, today, we're under constant stress. There's greater demands from all sides, and everyone seems to want more and more from us. And as a result, our sympathetic nervous system is stuck in on, probably more than it should be. It's unnecessarily firing off multiple times a day, giving our bodies little downtime to recover from the psychological and physiological effects. Now, this baseline level of stress has an impact on how much time and energy we believe we have to dedicate to looking after our health. So when I'm talking about your baseline level of stress, this is why I'm always talking about like meditation, entering the stress-free zone, gratitude practices. That's why that's 3 components that help us manage our stress on the 4i tracker. So that's quite 3 out of 8. It's quite a lot just to dedicate it to basically managing our state and stress. And the reason why is that if you can do that on a daily basis, what you find is your baseline is lower for stress, you cope better. And then as things get put on your plate, you're not being triggered as frequently. Now, the thing with managing our stress, the reason why it's so important for our health is because as soon as you feel like there's too much on your plate, the first ball that you are going to juggle, when you're juggling heaps of balls, the first one that you are going to drop is going to be your health. It's always going to be. It'll be like, I haven't got time for food prep. I certainly don't have time to meditate. I'm not going to do my workout today. I'm going to focus on the kids. I'm going to clean the house. I'm going to get everything done. I've got to put more energy into my career right now, or work's demanding more from me. And so that's the first thing that goes. So keeping our baseline down as much as possible by managing our stress is really important, because then we're actually able to prioritize our health. So what are the signs that you need to look for that you need more stress management techniques in your life? If your heart is increasing several times a day, your breathing is quickening, your muscles are tightening, you've got elevated blood pressure, you might be someone who gets stomach cramps or headaches, that state of feeling overwhelmed, quite tense, where you just feel really quite tired and exhausted from thinking about how much you have to do. When you're having difficulty sleeping, if you're struggling to find solutions and you're just struggling with problem solving, you have this fear that the stresses aren't going to go away, or persistent thoughts about one or more of the stresses. There can also be changes in our behavior, which is social withdrawal. This is a massive thing. When people feel like they're under the pump, they just pull themselves back from their community and their relationships, which is why it's on the 4i tracker. Feelings of sadness, frustration, loss of emotional control, an inability to rest, and self-medication, which can either be through medication itself or, drinking more, eating more sugar and carbs, and just comforting ourselves through other sources. So if we allow certain stimuli to trigger our fight or flight response stresses repeatedly, we end up forming quite strong neurological pathways to that response. So this can create a negative feedback loop that becomes harder to break because it becomes habitual over time, even if the stimulus is removed in some cases. Now, this occurs particularly when women have a strong dieting history. Their past experiences shape their stress and emotions and energy when it comes to making changes to their current habits and behaviors. So you have to recognize that if you have a strong history of dieting and you're someone who has, I'm just going to talk about myself in the past, I would totally overexert myself and change all of my food at once and be really, really strict for a period of time because I thought that's what I need to do. I try and exercise heaps. I was not approaching it, sustainably. And then what would happen is I would burn out, I would binge eat, and then I'd feel really crappy about myself. And so there was this emotional trigger, because not only did I feel embarrassed about the fact that I told all my friends that I was doing another diet and that, I was going to stick it out this time and blah, 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 I banged on it, paid some money for it, wasn't getting anywhere with it. But then also that I was ashamed that I was then binge eating and upset with myself and the guilt that I would feel about that. And then my response, my relationship with the idea of eating healthy was, it's not sustainable. I can't do it. It's too much hard work. Mentally, I feel deprived. And so I had a very poor relationship with food and with myself as a result of that. And so what had happened, it sort of become habitual. I had expected of myself that I would be good from Monday to Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I would just binge like mad. And then Monday, I'd go back to feeling totally guilty and this state of self-loathing, and I'd start the whole cycle again. And that had become the loop that I'd gotten stuck into. That was the habit and kind of what my expectations were of myself. And then whenever that played out, I was never shocked. I was kind of like, oh, well, how long have I been doing this for? 10 years. So why would that suddenly change? And so you have to assess, well, what is that loop that I'm stuck in? How am I speaking to myself? How do I feel about that? And what's kind of triggering that? What a relationship do I have with food or with exercise or with managing my time, managing my health based on my past experiences, and how that's shaping how I think I'm going to show up when I enter this and try and make changes to my lifestyle now. Just adding to that too, when you have an expectation of yourself from your past and you expect that you're going to fail at something, we have to understand, we don't want to fail. Nobody wants to fail. Nobody signs up to anything wanting to fail. Everybody wants to get results. I mean, that's why you're trying again, right? But the thing is, if there's like underlying belief system of I can't sustain this, or I'm going to burn it out, or it's too much for me right now, which just means that you need to peel it back on what you're trying to put into place, then the amount of energy that you're going to put into that, the amount of commitment that you're going to give to it, it's already limited before you even start, because your expectations have a massive impact on how long you're going to sustain something for. If you don't wholeheartedly believe that you can make changes to that area of your life, you're not actually going to stick it out. And so you've got to start to think, okay, well, I know that I can maintain, this is why I go through the 4I expectations with you in that first prep week. I know that I can maintain 2 dots a week of active living. I know that I can maintain 3 days a week where I enter the stress-free zone. I know that I can maintain 1 day a week where I get my community dot. And so just because it's on every single day, it doesn't mean that you just jump to 7 and you're going to have your nutrition on track 7 days, you're going to work out 7 days a week, you're going to, have your community dot 7 days a week, because it's too far removed from where you are right now. And that's what burns you out. And then that's what gets you stuck into that loop of I can't sustain it. I can't change it. So be okay with knowing that wherever your expectations for your dots are now, that's perfectly fine. And then just reassess it in a month. And then if you feel like you're competently doing that consistently, that's why that monthly tracking in the 4I tracker is there. I don't know if you've looked at that, but under the accountability tab in the 4I tracking, you can hit weekly or you can hit monthly. When you go on monthly, it shows you your streaks. And so your lines go across the week. Now, if you can see that you're consistently hitting on certain areas and you feel like you're doing that well, then you're ready to up it and maybe increase the dot by 1, maybe 2. I would never go more than 2. And then you can continue to habit track and sort of add to that. Okay, so it's got to be a gradual progression. And then you do feel like you can sustain it because you have this foundation when you're already doing it 2 days a week. So you're ready to up it to 3 days a week, but you've got that foundation in place. And so you feel confident that you can up it and you're not going to feed into that loop of this is too much, this burns me out, I give up. Okay. Now, when we see fear differently, it loses control over us. What we're often feeling is not actually fear, but this uncomfortableness. And uncomfortableness can often mask itself as fear and it's our mind stall tactic. It's a way of keeping us in the same routine, avoiding change in our comfort zone. Now, know that there will be uncomfortable moments when we're en route to becoming our greater self, when we're challenging ourselves to accomplish more and to up the ante. It's going to make us feel uncomfortable. Be okay with that uncomfortableness, as it means that you are growing. So changing our habits and behaviors or daily routine consumes a lot of mental energy. So expect to be uncomfortable. I just want you to imagine that you're driving a different way to work. You take the road that you've never been down before. You need a GPS to navigate it. And due to not knowing where you're going, you need more mental resources to find your way. Hence, more often than not, we default back to the tried and true route because it requires less mental energy processing. And we know that we can just do it on automation. Whatever your current habits and behaviors are, when you're trying to shift them, you're trying to create a new morning routine, you're trying to bring something into your practice that you don't normally do, it's basically like trying to drive somewhere new where you don't know the suburb, you don't know what's going on, and you have to concentrate. And so it uses a lot of mental energy. So it's not surprising that if you're not making decisions in advance and you're not managing your biochemical state well, that when it consumes too much energy, then you switch back into that self-preservation mode. And then we just start to make excuses, avoid tasks, procrastinate, all those avoidance tactics come up. This is exactly what happens when we're tired and we're trying to change our health. When our biochemical state drops below the 50% mark, we naturally fall back into our old patterns of behavior and we revert back to our old ways of being, or what they call is where you snap back to your old self. So what we need to be focusing on to stay above the 50% energy line and in our prime biochemical state. I got halfway through writing this slide and then obviously walked away from it. Luckily, I know this off the top of my head. So what we need to be focusing on to keep managing our biochemical state. Well, the first one is having a sound sleep routine, getting as much sleep as you can, would you believe? Trying to get to bed at the same time and then waking up at the same time is really good for our circadian rhythm. So even though there may be disruptions in that, trying to keep within, a certain parameter at night and in the morning is really great for us. The other thing with our biochemical state is how we fuel our body has a massive impact on our energy, also on our gut health, and that affects our mental health. The other thing is how we hydrate our body, because of course that allows us to remove the toxins, and the more toxins that we can release from our body, the more hydrated we are, the more mental clarity that we experience. And then the other biochemical thing that we need to manage is our stress, because whenever stress takes over, it totally disrupts our hormones. Our cortisol is released more. We can experience adrenal fatigue. And then all of a sudden, our sleep's disrupted. The foods that we're choosing to eat is disrupted. And whether we're prioritizing moving our body and all those sorts of things comes into play as well. So maintaining sort of a baseline will help you feel like you're keeping your head above water. But how do we actually do that? So even though it can be detrimental to our success, sometimes taking the easy option, playing out that old pattern of behavior is actually easier option for our brain, especially when our resources are low and decision fatigue has kicked in. It's the moments when we order pizza for dinner. It's because we haven't got our meals planned and we can't figure out what we're going to eat in the moment. It's those moments when we press the snooze button and we miss our meditation or our workout because we got to bed too late after spending too much time on our device. It's those moments when we don't complete the meal prep as you think you've got too much housework to do that day, not considering how much time it's actually going to consume of the rest of your week and how much more you're going to fall behind in your housework as a result of it. It's those moments in which we skip the events with our families and our friends as we feel we've got too much work to do. And then what happens is because we just push ourselves into the ground, our stress increases even further. We know that these things are bad for us. We know that we shouldn't be doing them. But let's be honest, if it's an old pattern of behavior, it's easy. And so it makes sense in the moment for us to just play that out. Now, the problem here is that we often regret it later. We don't feel as good. It causes more stress in our lives. And so we feel overwhelmed as it actually feeds into our fear of failure. So every time that we go back to one of those old patterns of behavior, the problem is that our subconscious goes, see, that's what you do. That's something you've done forever. You've always struggled with this. This is continuing to play out. And so you've got to be careful that every time you vote for that, or you're not organized, and so as a result you vote for that, as in vote for that identity for your subconscious, then what happens is that it kind of feeds into that belief system that we have. It makes us feel more stressed. So how do we form new behaviors and break old patterns, sorry. So to form new habits, we must lay the foundation for new neurological highways to be built, ensuring that they're well established and well maintained. If we can make something a neurological highway, it just happens on automation. It just becomes second nature. And that's exactly what we want. We're working towards creating really automatic habits, a great routine that supports that. And then it just happens. We don't really have to think about it. We use much less mental energy, fewer instances we have to use willpower, and we just feel like it is just ticking along for us. These new highways help us close the gap from who we are to who we need to become to reach our goals. Now, this is done through focusing on habit tracking and creating a supportive daily routine. Guys, I'm always banging on about this. Habit tracking, daily routine, habit tracking, daily routine. You're like, far out. She talks about this a lot, but there is a reason why, because this is what makes it automated. Okay. The wonderful thing about habit tracking is it can actually make you realize when it's falling apart. It gives you solid data of what you are or are not doing. I found one thing with myself. So I stopped doing a food diary for probably about 5 years, up until about 3 months ago, 2.5 months ago, because I had done calorie counting for years and put it into my fitness pal, and I just did not want to think about calories or anything anymore. And I was just like, I just can't even fathom the idea of tracking my food. But I was talking to a friend, and she wanted to know about my food diary. And so that's hence how the food diary thing and acceleration, the accountability challenge came about. Because after I was doing it, it made me become very aware of where certain behaviors were occurring based on how tired I was, how late in the week it was, what foods I was turning to. And so it just brought this awareness up. And I suppose that's what habit tracking ultimately is, just creating an awareness of what you're actually doing. So it's not just in that unconscious state. Now, the more frequently you create these new paths, the easier they are to travel until they unconsciously lead you to success. It's about putting in the reps. The more times you do a habit, the more time you think a thought, the more times you repeat a routine, the easier it becomes for you to do it again and again. Once they're embedded in your memory and your experiences, your need for willpower to force change diminishes. Change becomes a lot easier. If you try to change too many things at once and attempt to use willpower to force yourself to change, this can result in a negative neural pathway being built to the point where your brain views your goals as a threat because it requires too much energy to process the unknown factors surrounding it. That's why it's got to be a gradual build-up. So to change our behavior and ensure we reach our goals, we must make conscious choices in advance. So I was talking about the fight or flight response that we have in the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. When we're in the parasympathetic nervous system, when we're in that calm state, when we're rational, we're problem solving, that is when we've got to utilize that time and plan ahead so that when we do get into that stress state, that we're not making unconscious choices from our old patterns of behavior. And so these are the things that we need to focus on to make sure that when we're in our calm state, we're setting up our environment, our routine as best as we possibly can to support ourselves when we hit those hurdles. We need to schedule our weekly non-negotiables with reminders into an electronic calendar. We need to make sure that we're completing a meal plan, an online shop, and our food prep on allocated days. We need to commit to our workouts. We have to decide what days you're going to complete them, what the duration is going to be, and what activity you'll actually do in advance. We need to factor in when we're going to enter the stress-free zone. When are we going to spend quality time with our family or our children? And when are we going to complete self-love activities? Now, I know that this sounds so regimented and ridiculous, but it just makes it so much easier if you know where this stuff goes. For example, just talking about like self-love activities, I wash my hair on a Monday and a Thursday, and I shave my legs on those days as well. And I put a tan on a Thursday, a Friday, and a Monday. It's like, how ridiculous, right? That I have to think of the days that I'm actually going to bother washing my hair, shaving my legs, putting on my tan. I have to do that. Otherwise, what happens is it kind of gets blown out and it doesn't work. So then I make sure that my morning routine, I have more time in my morning routine to be able to fit that in. So that is the point at which I'm planning stuff. And then I just kind of don't think about it between then. And like Wednesday's not an option to wash my hair. I just do a greasy bun. So that's why my hair always looks nice on the group coaching calls. Probably slightly probably calculated in that regard. But the more you can like preempt about how you're going to fit these things into your day and into your life, the more frequently you're going to do it and the easier it is because you're not making decisions around it. Okay. Small decisions made in advance. With our meal plans, we need to decide which days we can consume our balanced meals. Decide what day you're going to go out and you're going to have restaurant meal or whatever, and what day you're going to eat your treat bag of lollies, or what day do you want to drink your wine. Try and organize that before your week starts based on what your social events are. It doesn't have to be the same thing every week. I mean, of course that changes. People go out to dinner on a Wednesday. Crazy, I know, but they do. Not myself, but like I'm sure people out there do. But factor it in based on what's going on in your social life. Know when you're going to have those things, and then you're okay with making sound choices with your food in other occasions and having your food prepped. And then you can have those splurges, and it's never too far between them. You need to create an environment around you that supports your greater self. Little things like doing a pantry cleanse on a Sunday night has a massive impact on the food you eat throughout the week. Definitely worth your time. I hid all the hedgehog slice in the back freezer on Sunday night this week because I was like, I need to do that. We need to have a supportive and an accountable network around us. So if you can't necessarily get your partner or your family on board, then making sure that you're immersing yourself in the Inspired Mama community, because there is heaps of opportunities for people to be supportive in there, particularly on the weekly food prep posts, push your limits posts, and the food diary accountability posts. Okay. Turn off your notifications across your devices so your attention's not pulled in any direction and you're more effective with the use of your time. And when it comes to your daily routine, if you're trying to bring something into your practice, always habit stack it. Now, when I'm talking about habit stacking, I'm talking about finding a place for it. So if you're doing something consistently already, and then you just slide it in directly after it or slightly before it, what you'll find is that habit, because it's already attached to another habit and something that you're doing consistently, part of your routine, it's much easier for you to execute on it there. The problem is when people come in and they say, oh, I'm going to start doing journaling, or I'm going to meditate, or I'm going to think about the gratitude that I, feel for my day, or how I'm going, or I'm going to drink more water, but then they don't have a place to which they put that habit. And then of course it just rolls on because there's no space for it. And they kind of expecting that they're going to get to it, but life's too busy for that. So even down to the point of in the morning, I fill up my 2 water bottles with my 2 liters worth of water. And then I know that I have to drink them by the end of the day, but that's like my gauge, but I fill it up at like 8-ish so that I know that that's what I'm going to drink throughout the day. So try and get into the point, okay, what is it that I need to make sure that I do, which is going to give me a gauge as to how I'm going across the day. And I'm kind of setting myself up in an environment that's going to support those changes that I'm trying to make. And then just consistently working on refining our morning and evening routine as much as we can to allow for better sleep. After we have traveled the road repeatedly, it then becomes a positive, unconscious behavior that naturally leads to success. And of course, the more that you execute on these things, the more your fear of failure dissipates. You start to think, well, actually, yeah, I can do this because it's something I'm just doing on a daily basis and it's becoming habitual for me. So it's only through tackling these things gradually and slowly and building on them and developing over a long period of time, because of course you can't master all of this in 3 months. It's just not possible. That's why I talked to you about being on this journey for 40 years. We are going to be absolute queens at managing our health by the time we're old. So just know that it's a gradual journey and we're going to continue to habit stack and add to it as we move along. Now, when we first attempt to travel down a new highway, it can feel incredibly uncomfortable as the unknown requires copious amount of mental energy to process. Now, fear of failure can override it if we're not aware of it. Although going back to the old pattern of behavior could negatively impact our ability to reach a goal, it's still easier for our brain than learning something new, changing our daily routine, trying to improve our health. It's a constant challenge when we're trying to grow and evolve as an individual. So furthermore, our tendency to repeat negative behavior amplifies when we hit decision fatigue and our brain puts us into self-preservation mode. So to try and avoid those negative behaviors, try and plan as much as you can in advance and make it as automated with reminders and calendars and all those sorts of things so that you're experiencing less decision fatigue. You know that everything, all the habits that you want has a bit of a spot, and then you're setting yourself up for success to try and put it into place from every day. I mean, every day does not go smoothly. That's just the reality of it. But at least if we've got a plan in place and we've got our food ready and we know that we were meant to exercise at this dedicated time, we kind of arrange our life around it. Our objective is to demolish these old highways and build new ones using a strategic and long-lasting approach that works without turning on the fight or flight response. So how do we move from here? From this place when we start out where we feel like we need to do something drastic, where we're feeling overwhelmed with what we need to do, where we're feeling fearful of committing again or not sticking at it, and we're worried that we won't be able to sustain the changes. How do we move from there to where we want to be, where we're doing day in, day out, making decisions that are controlled and calculated? Know what your 4I expectations are and how many dots you want to achieve across the week. And that's all you're tracking for. Be totally happy when you hit them. Habit track and review your monthly data. Continue to refine your weekly plan with your non-negotiables. If possible, try and factor in all 9. Now, just running through those 9, they're on top of the weekly planner. You've got your food prep, food shop, meal plan, your workouts, quality time with kids, stress-free zone, self-love, managing your sleep routine, personal development. Habit stack where you can in your daily routine. Plan as much as you possibly can in advance. And to keep yourself in that really positive mental state, I recommend that you try and listen to personal development daily, even if it's just 5 minutes. And I'm not talking about listening to my voice. I mean, you guys must be so sick of listening to my voice. Listen to audiobooks. There's so many of them. Now, in the tips and tricks section of the app, there is an article called Filling Your Mind with Uplifting Content. And in there, I have gone through and updated all of my favorite books that I recommend you listen to, and then particularly all my audio books. So there's an updated list in there. I just did that last week. So listen to audio, fill your mind with that stuff and just absorb it and just understand that you're totally in control, and it will just keep you in that really motivated, positive space. Keep that fear of failure out. So breaking the patterns of negative behaviors.
Know that the response most traveled will become the default response to future events, regardless of whether it's positive or negative. So the more you practice a response, the more it will become your norm. Okay. Things like hitting the snooze button, putting housework before your workouts, making impulsive food choices, then considering your stress response if you don't respond to stress well, or the internal dialogue that you say to yourself when you make a mistake. All those things, the more you do them, they will become your just automatic behavior that will play out. And so what we need to do is we need to adjust that. It will be the more times that you go through Woolworths and you don't put the Mars bar in your trolley as you're walking through the thing, as you're walking through the checkout, the less times that you'll do it. Because you'll be like, oh, that's not something that I do. The more times you stop yourself from buying a muffin with your coffee, that's what you do. The less times that you spend hitting the snooze button, you'll get stronger at that. So the more times you take a deep breath instead of getting frustrated at your child, the more that will become your automatic response. Okay. So we just need to understand that it is hard in the beginning and it takes a lot of energy and effort, but we can change our responses. Every time we respond or make a decision, you are voting for the kind of person that you want to be. Now, I've done a lot of work with you all around the identity that you want to hold, how you want to be remembered when you leave this planet. And so remember that those votes that you make on a daily basis, those small decisions that you make are voting for that identity. Am I this person or am I this person? And all those little votes, they add up and make massive changes in the long run. So make sure that you're choosing wisely. So here with the arrows, you can see our positive conscious response, which is when we're in that logical, rational mind. We've got our positive unconscious response, which is exactly how we want to train ourselves. So when we're in that stress state, we actually still make positive choices, which takes a long time, but it can occur. And then that was the right hand side. My bad. The left hand side is the negative unconscious response. We're in that flight or fight response, that old pattern of behavior that we're trying to abolish plays out and we're not happy with it. So we're going to either use our rational mind and plan as much as we possibly can, or try and move off to the right where we're actually responding how we want. And we're being more conscious with it, even when we're in a state of stress. An example like this for me is that whenever I used to get really stressed, I used to always stress eat. I'd always eat lots of chocolate, drink alcohol, go to the shops, just binge eat really. And then now when I get stressed, I take a deep breath. I either do a meditation, have a cup of tea. I just don't respond like that anymore. I mean, sure, depending on the trigger and how much there is on my plate, if my stress state is already high and then too much on the plate, boom, I go off to the left and I'm like a little cannonball. But most of the time now I can control that and I go off to the right, which is great because I'm more conscious of the choices that I'm making and more calm in that state and happy with how I'm responding. So it just takes time to retrain our brain. So thank you so much for tuning in, ladies. That's the end. I'd love you to tell me what you've taken away from that, please. I've talked a lot. That was flat out 50 minutes. Woo, impressive. Let me drink my smoothie. So tell me, what have you taken away from that?
I think something from the early part of it was about that fear response, and just recognizing what my default behavior is, I guess. But the thing that stuck out to me was it's really just the fear of not meeting my own expectations. I think before, when I thought about fear of failure, I was thinking about external stuff. But when I think about times that I've been triggered, really what's upset me is my own expectations, not necessarily other people's. And that was a bit of a light bulb, I think.
Yeah.
And also, I think if somebody had asked me before, oh, what's my default behavior, off the top of my head, I would have said, oh, well, I get sad and I retreat. But then when I thought about actual instances where I'd been triggered, and I think it depends on the situation, but actually I can become really arrogant and dismissive and kind of shut other people down. And it's really hard to even say that out loud because I just would not associate that necessarily with my personality. But if I'm honest,
I also think it can depend on, like, it's good you say that, because I think it can depend on who you're talking to when you're triggered.
100%.
Like if I'm triggered when I'm talking to my husband, wow, like watch out. I'm coming for you, mate. And he knows. He's just like, get out of the room. She's losing it. And I'm slamming doors and stomping off down the road and like carrying on like a child. And then, probably with my parents as well, like that. And then with other people, I can be the other way, like kind of like, oh, like standoffish kind of
Much
thing.
less confrontational.
Yeah. So I think it just depends, doesn't it, on how
100%.
their relationship as well.
Mm.
But you're right, it is our own expectations. It's just the fear of not meeting our own expectations. And I think the biggest thing is when we make a commitment to something, because we want it to work and we're trying to improve, we just get disappointed when we feel like there's an inner disappointment when we feel that we're not working in alignment with that.
Yeah.
And managing that disappointment and understanding that that's actually a part of the growth process, that it's not always going to be, we're not going to always master it, and we're not always going to be perfect. Like even last week, I was disappointed with my food diary. And it's like, I was giving myself a lecture on Sunday night. And I'm like, Chelsea, would you allow your clients to give themselves a lecture like you're lecturing yourself right now on a Sunday night? But that's the thing, right? I have to like talk to myself like, what would health coach Chelsea say? And she's certainly not doing what she's doing right now. So it's just an inner disappointment thing that we can experience, or when we have expectations of ourselves. Anyone else have anything?
I'll share. I think for me, I was just thinking about the fear aspect, particularly of, signing up for this and then failing and thinking, oh my gosh, I have spent all this money, and is this like my last chance to actually make a difference with my health? And 12 weeks ago, my thinking about that was probably that, I'm probably going to fail this like I have everything else. But, like I said to you the other day, I actually cannot believe the difference in my mental state now to where I was 12 weeks ago. And I'm leaving this acceleration knowing that I have made that difference. Oh, sorry, I didn't expect to get upset.
It's so encouraging to hear from someone that's only like halfway through. Not even. It's awesome.
Yeah, I'm a very different person mentally to what I was 12 weeks ago. And I thank you so much for that, Chelsea. And I know it's not the end of my journey, but I know I actually have the tools and the self-belief to get me to where I want to be.
I'm so glad. That's what I'm after. That's all I want everyone to walk away with.
Yeah, so that's awesome.
No, it's not a sprint. The problem is it can't be achieved in 3 months.
Yeah.
But it's hard to explain that when you talk to someone in the beginning, Once you're in it, then you understand that it's a continual journey.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I fully had that hope right at the beginning, after that first call, I was like, this could actually be the thing that changes for me. But I did have that fear that I won't make it like I have every other time.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, that constant, the content and just really engaging with that has made the biggest difference for me. And when I have had those slip ups, it's been, okay, so stop, reflect, what was the trigger, what can I do to, plan for that in future, and yeah, lots of different things. So I think this one just kind of summed it up for me, and yeah, excited for the next few months and see where I go from there.
So how is everyone going with their mental state and the fear of failure? How is everyone feeling across the board? Be honest. I want to hear how people are feeling. Here, Karen, let me unmute you. Here we go.
I guess like your last lady there, same, I've done the 12 weeks, and like mentally I'm a lot more aware of like my issues with food and stress levels and so forth. And like even through injury that I had a few weeks ago, I could sort of see a huge change in myself, and I think my family can too. So I guess it's been a really big learning curve, because before, you just give it a meal plan or whatever, and you do that for 12 weeks and you either lose weight or you don't, and whatever, and then you're sort of left hanging. Whereas at least with your program, there is help. There's still help there even after the 12 weeks. That if I get stuck, I know I can send you a text message and say, look, I'm really having an issue with this. Where do I go for help? So then, I know you're there to direct me to the right, whether it be a podcast or webinar or something like that to listen to get my motivation back and head me in the right direction. And I mean, like over the last 12 weeks, I actually haven't lost a huge amount of weight, but my mental state is a lot better than it was when I first started. So thank you.
That's good, Karen. But you've been you've really taken on like the changes with your food and your exercise, and you've really stepped it up. So it's just like working with you to refine it all now and work out what that looks like, you know, for you long term down the track, so you can lose all the weight that you want. Just working out what your body needs for that. That's what we're trying to tweak at the moment. That's the thing. Everybody's bodies are so different. It can be hard, you know, with nutritional advice, because one size doesn't fit all. You have to find what it is that you need as an individual. The main thing is I just want you to finish and feel like I can keep going. Like I've got this, you know. That's the main thing. That's the sustainability of it, which is what I worry when I put up a list like this, guys. Like when I put up a list like that, that makes me worry that would overwhelm you, because I know that that's a massive list of things to be tackling. And that's why I talk about doing it like slowly and gradually and building on it, and just knowing that it's a continual process to adding to it, because there's a lot to be planning in advance. I'm just getting better and better as we go. Would anyone else like to add anything? Or are we good? Go, Mel.
Just like when we were talking yesterday about like the unicorns that are out there. And
so Mel, I need to tell you about the unicorns. So Mel goes to me, Chelsea, I was watching some of the testimonials, and I was listening over to these women, and there's some women that come in and they lose like 26 kilos. I'm like, oh yeah, the unicorns. And she's like, I was like, yeah, they exist, but they're rare. And she's like, oh, okay, what do they do? And I was like, they just go full hog, which is probably, is that what you're going to talk about now? About how they go full hog?
Yeah, and just like trying not to compare myself. And I find that difficult at times, because I'm like, I want to be a unicorn. But for me, I know if I go full hog, then I'm going to burn out.
Yes.
So I'm like, it's not sustainable. And so just like when you were talking about the habit stacking and that sort of thing, like I'm looking at your list now and I can tick off a lot more in that list than I could 6 weeks ago that I'm doing, and just slowly increase it so that I can keep going. But I just can't help but want to be a unicorn.
Don't worry. And I think the thing is, like I was saying to you yesterday, I always get really worried about the unicorns, because what happens is they come in and they don't snack at all, and then they exercise like an hour plus strong workouts a day, and then they are like super crazy with their like carbs and their sugar, their food, and like their level of self-control is greater than mine. And I think, Jesus, like you're going hard out. I always worry that they're going to burn out. I'm always like, just careful. I don't want you to burn out. Like, I don't want you to hit. And then they're just people where a switch has gone in their head and that's their personality. But it's just all these different personalities. And trust me, we all like to be a unicorn to some degree. Mind you, I wouldn't like to be like, you know, personally, the idea of being like a bodybuilder and like cutting carbs and like just never drinking and never eating sugar and never going out to me, like that is like twisted unicorn. So I feel like you've got to find, you know, your balance of what makes you happy, your level of unicorn, and then you just keep plodding on and upping the ante, because you're all being unicorns in your own respect. You are all unicorns in your own respect.
That's funny.
Yeah, it is hard not to compare ourselves to others, and that can be that's challenging as well. That's why I try not to talk about weight and stuff like that. I don't celebrate people's weights or weigh-ins or anything through the acceleration group. I try not to talk about it in here, because I just don't think it should be about that. If your entire weight loss journey is about weight loss itself, then I know that you won't sustain it. And I can tell that in a breakthrough call too. If I'm talking to someone and all they care about is the number that's going to show on the scales, I know that they haven't got the longevity to be sticking out for a long time, because as soon as they have a week where they get on the scales and it doesn't work, then they fall apart and it's not worth their time or their effort. And the thing is, it has to be about who you want to be, how you want to feel, how you mentally speak to yourself, and then that identity. And if you can make it about that, then you will do it day in and day out. And then as a result of that, the scales will drop. It's a science, but it's the consistency of being committed regardless of the scales. Unfortunately, if it was up to the scales, I wouldn't have gone to the gym on Monday. I was real cranky. I was whinging at the gym to my girls about my scales, and I was whinging to Chris about it. He's like, shut up, woman. Nobody cares. I care today. Okay. So we all have those moments. Don't worry. Oh, I love chatting to you guys. Thank you. You've made my day. Have a wonderful day.
Jess.
Okay. See ya.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for joining me in this session on obliterating fear and overcoming failure. I really hope that you found these strategies valuable and that you're feeling empowered to take control of your health journey again. Just remember, ladies, that the path to lasting change is not about drastic measures or quick fixes. We know this. It's consistent small steps that add up to significant transformations over time. And when you start implementing these small strategies daily, what you'll see is that they will build your confidence and your resilience, and they'll just become a part of who you are. If you'd like to dive deeper into these concepts or access more of my trainings, I invite you to visit inspiredmama.com. At our website, you're going to find a whole wealth of resources which are designed to help you reduce your stress, improve your health habits, and achieve lasting results. Or for those women who are ready to take their health to that next level and work with me closely, I also encourage you to visit our programs section at inspiredmama.com. You can submit an application through the website, and we'll just start that first conversation about how you might be best supported on your health journey. To stay connected with daily tips and inspiration, please follow me on social media. On Instagram, you'll find me at Chels_inspiredmama. On Facebook, it's inspiredmama_Chels. And if you want to be part of an incredible community, I invite you to join the Inspired Mama support group on Facebook. This is a beautiful group of ladies where my team and I nurture and support women just like you who are committed to making lasting changes into their health and their lives. Thank you again for your time and attention today. And remember, ladies, that you have the power to overcome your fears and achieve your health goals. So here's to obliterating fear and overcoming failure and living your most inspired, healthy life.